Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to try to see if we can follow along because I did not load up the presentation on our computer, so we're going to go old school and use the Elmo there. And what this is the presentation of what is called the F.I.R.S.T, which is the Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas. Now, all school districts are required to have a public meeting, and we're complying with that requirement. And what it does, it shows the public the fiscal, responsibilities and the school district. Now, one of the important things that I would like to point out here is that if you notice, you have to keep in mind that this is for fiscal year ended August 31st, 2013. So that's the 12-13 school year. It usually runs about almost a year behind. So the Financial Accountability Management Report is based for year ended August 31st, 2013. Now, this report is not compiled here locally. It's actually compiled by the Texas Education Agency. Now, they take a lot of indicators, they look at all the data, and then they come up with a report. Now, I'll start off right off the bat. Previously, the school district had been receiving superior marks, which is the highest that you could receive in the first financial integrity rating system of Texas for the 2012-2013 school year. However, our school district did drop by one. We went to going from superior achievement, which is page 5, to above standard achievement. Our district score was 63. So even though we passed the overall rating, the passing grade was 52, we did receive a 65, which was 1 point shy from continuing with our superior rating. And the school district rating is right here. It is above standard achievement. And what we're gonna do now, we're gonna go through all the indicators one by one, compare the 2 years, the previous 2 years, and then we'll find out where if we lose some points and what we're doing to regain those points. I've been working with Ms. Landry and with Ron, and with the help of our school board, I really strongly feel that for the 13-14 school year, our rating is going to be up once again to superior, based on all indicators that we're looking at right now. So going on to the next page. So these are the financial indicators that the school, the TA looks for. Let me see if I can you kind of narrow it in a little bit bigger? The first ones, what starts off was the total balance less non-spendable and restricted fund balance greater than 0 in the general fund. So if the answer is yes, which yes, we do have more than 0 in our fund balance, you would get the points. If you miss any of the indicators 1 through 6, if you get a no on any of those, automatically you become below standard or unacceptable. So it is very important that we get yeses on all this, and the district did receive yes on all. So we had first one is fund balance more than 0. The answer is yes. Number 2 was the total unrestricted net asset balance in bonds in the governmental activity columns in the statement in net assets greater than 0. And the answer once again was yes. So in other words, we did have money in the bank. Number 3, were there no disclosures in the annual financial report, in the audit report? When they did the audit report back in 12/13, did they find any disclosures or any problems with the financial statements? And the answer is no. So therefore, there were no disclosures, and we get credit for that. Number 4, was the annual financial report filed on time? In other words, did the audit report get filed in time by January 28th deadline? And the answer was yes, so we get those points. Number 5, was there any unqualified opinion in the annual financial report? In other words, did we get a clean report, or did the auditors say, there's something material, there's some things that were not reported correctly? We did not get that. We got a clean audit report, so we get credit for that. And then number 6, which is the final one of the major ones, did the annual financial report not disclose any instances of material weaknesses and internal control? And once again, the audit found none. So on the 6 major ones, we got credit for all of them, so that is good. Remember, if we were to get no at any one of those, the district would be substandard. Going on to the other indicators, 7 through 14 on that page. Number 7 was the 3-year average percent of total tax collections, including delinquent, greater than 98%. And in there, you can get from 0 to 5 points. If it's greater than 98%, we get 5 points, and our district does real well on our tax collection rates. So it was at 98 or better, so we got those 5 points. Number 8, did the comparison of teams data to like information in annual financial reports result in an aggregate variance of less than 3% of expenditures per fund? In other words, is our teams data accurate of what is being reported on our audit reports? And if the answer is yes, or were there any issues? So we got all those 5 points. If you notice on number 9, were debt-related expenditures greater than 350 per student? If the district 5-year percentage change in student or less than 7%, or if property taxes collected for training of tax effort is less than $200,000 per student. Previously, the district had gotten a 2. This time around, since it's on an average and we have been doing better, we now get a 5, which is all the 5 points. Going on to number.
What do we do different there to earn the 5 points?
This one, it was an average, and remember this is 12/13. So what it's saying here that
This was before.
Right, that the collection, tax effort collected back in the 12/13 had improved. It was greater than those numbers there, so therefore we received all that 5 points. Number 10, was there no disclosure? Once again, was there any disclosure in the annual audit report? And the answer was no, so therefore we got the 5 points. Number 11, did the district have full accreditation status in relation to financial management practice? In other words, did we get a monitor or a conservator? And the answer is no, we didn't have any, so therefore they gave us the 5 points. On number 12, was the aggregate of budgeted expenditures and other uses less than the aggregate of total revenues, other resource, and fund balance in general? In other words, when we took all our expenses and compared them to all our revenue plus, here's the plus the fund balance, was revenue more than expenses? When you take into consideration the fund balance, the answer was yes, so therefore we got 5 points.
Because we use the fund balance.
That is correct. Now, that's why you can see how if you go to 0 in your fund balance, it compounds and therefore puts you in a substandard position. Number 14, was the ratio of cash and investment to deferred revenues, excluding amount equal to net delinquent taxes receivable in the general fund, greater to or equal to 1-to-1 if deferred revenues are less than net delinquent taxes receivable? And all that says is, or cash or did we have any cash investment to invest? And the answer was yes, so we got those 5 points. Moving on to the next page, which is 8. This is where it starts getting a little bit more interesting, and this is kind of where we actually have some control. Number 15 is, was the administrative cost ratio less than the threshold ratio? And this is important because sometimes school districts in general, not only P1, but school districts in general, get criticized that central office has too many administrators and that our administrative cost is too high. And again, this not only only happens in Rio Hondo, but in school districts across. In our case, our administrative costs were within the threshold ratio, so therefore we get the 5 points. In other words, we're fine where we're supposed to. Number 16, number 16 was the ratio of students to teacher within the ranges shown below according to district size. And remember, I've always said that when you look at our teachers and you compare it to the number of students, we fall within the recommended percentages, so we got all 5 points. But number 17 is what we have worked on, and if you notice, we lost 2 points there, and all we needed was 1 more point to be superior. And the next question is, was the ratio of students to total staff with the ranges shown below according to district size? In other words, when you take not only the teachers, but you also take all staff and you compare it to the number of students, and you compare it to a chart that they give you, and I believe that page 25, if you go to page 25, if you go to page 25, okay, then you can also see it on, there's another page here that you can see it in, and that is page
19.
19, right. If you go to page 19, yeah, page 19. 19 not in on that presentation either? Okay, but if you go to page 19, it'll tell you, go ahead and use that. It'll tell you what are the recommended ratios for the district size. So under indicator 17, which is, the location is right here, it says for a school district size, and let me go to that one so that I can follow it. For a school district size, less than 500, a low would be 5, high would be 14. In our case, we're in the 1,000 to 4,999. This is where we fall, because we have approximately 2,200 kids. We should be low range would be 6.3, high range would be 14, and I believe that our school district was, rated. Or it's actually, let's see here.
You saw it for 18.
Right, I don't have that information with me, but I believe that our school district ranges about 5.9 and the lower end. I think it was 5.7 something, but I'll get that to our school, to our board, which means we were lower than 5.8 per number of staff per employee, per students. Therefore, we did not receive all the 5 points available. And
Because we were lower?
because we were lower, right?
That
So
means
we
we
were
had
not
too
being
many
efficient.
staff. We had too many staff per student.
Right. The lower you are there, they're saying in order for a school district to be efficient, because this is part of the efficiency, you need to be at the lowest 6.3 per student, at the highest 14, and we wound up being, I believe it was like 5.9 or 6.0. So we were underneath the 6.3, which is the minimum recommended, and therefore we received just 3 points instead of the 5 points. If you notice, go back to page 8.
When we got the first in 2012, they already had told us that that's where we were losing points.
Yes, that is correct. And if you notice, go to lower this a little bit. If you notice, this has been a trend. Yes, like that. Because here is 12, which is 11, 12, and then this is 12, 13. And since 11, 12, we were at 3. 12, 13, 3 again. In other words, since 11, 12, we have been more staff members than we actually had students, than we actually needed for students.
Is this why we have to pay off?
That was part of the reason why we had to address this. The other reason was this year. We were trying to address both 17 and 18. 18, if you notice, we lost 2 points. That's because here was a decrease in undesignated unreserved fund balance greater than 20% over 2 fiscal years in the total revenues, operating expenditures, and general fund, then the district receives 5 points. In other words, if the average for 3 years, which is important to understand, if the average is more than 20%, in other words, if in 3 years you pull more than 20% of your fund balance, then you're not gonna get all the 5 points. And if you go to the explanation notes that were given to us, I believe that is in page 20? Yes, page 20, which I don't think we have it there, Ms. Lopez, but on page 20 it says that the district failed indicator 18 due to the decrease in fund balance experienced from 10-11 to 12-13. The district undesignated unreserved fund balance declined a total of 65%. So when you took that average, we pulled 65% of our fund balance right there. And so the fund balance went from 2,964,403 down to 1,035,480 at the end of August 2013. So before people say, oh, Mr. Garcia came in and spent all the money, I did not. This is prior to me getting here. Actually, I came in July, which was towards the end of the school year. But if you notice, this decline has been going on already for several years.
Sir, so the difference of 1,928,923, was that to pay employees? Is that what happened?
There was a combination of many things. They're comparing from 10-11, 11-12. I think the first time they decreased like 800,000, and then the next time we decreased another close to $1 million. And yes, it was seen. Remember that most budgets, 80% more or less, between 75 to 80% of the budgets are consumed by payroll costs, and therefore my best determination is that yes, this money was being brought now to be able to make payroll.
Sir, what are we doing to prevent this from happening again?
That's a good question. We've done several things. One, which I think is the most important, is we changed our board policy. I think it's CI local, if I'm not mistaken. CI local or CE local, where we're now putting in a minimum requirement for fund balance. In other words, there's in our policy through board action, it says, you know what, we need to have at least 60 days of operating capital. Although it's not a requirement, it is a recommendation. So that's one, we changed board policy. Two, we went through the struggles of last year, and last year was a very difficult year, contrary to popular belief, when we actually had to downsize by closing vacancies and adjusting our ratios, and eventually, displacement of employees. Mm-hmm. So we've done that. We've also done a lot of in-house things, such as we hired, and this was not the only contributor, but we brought in somebody who actually knows how to do HVAC, which is the air conditioning, and control those expenses, because before we were bringing in contractors and we were spending quite a bit of money. We hired somebody who had those expertise, and that individual has saved the district substantial amount of money. I don't want to say how much exactly, because I don't know the exact number, but it has been substantial. The other thing that has worked out was Ron was able to negotiate our electric, how much we get charged for our electric use, and that saved us some money. So bringing in, taking care of the work, not doing consulting work, getting a new rate for electricity, and controlling our energy consumption through many things, we were able to save the money, save the school district some money. So we've done, several things to try to avoid this from happening again.
Sir, do you think that, because laying off people is really hard, and the signs were there, like the report says that it happened back in 2012 and nothing was done about it. Do you think maybe in the future, or maybe F.I.R.S.T recommended that the staffing audit be done like every 2 years, every 3 years, something?
Yes, that's one of the things that, in conversations that I've had with Mr. Martinez, he has mentioned that he wants to come up and try to put something in place that says, you know what, after 2 years, after 3 years, the district must go through a staffing review. And that's important. If you notice, remember, when your budget is between 75 to 80% of your budget is in personnel, that's where you're gonna be able to make and keep an eye on the difference by doing proper staffing formulas and looking at your student enrollment. That's the other thing that the district, failed on, seeing what were the trends on enrollment. So when you have student enrollment decreasing, then your staff should be decreasing also. And if you're on top of that, then you can prevent from pulling the fund balance. Now, you can pull fund balance intentionally. In other words, if you have $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, and you say, you know what, I'm gonna purposely bring down $1 million because I wanna buy 10 school buses, that is different than pulling money just to make your fund balance, your budget balance. So you can't pull money from fund balance. We do have a policy though, once again, going back to the policy, where we're saying we want at least 60 days. Remember, on the average, it takes $57,000 to run the school district, so we need to be at about $3.2 million. Right now, we were as low as $800,000. The preliminary audit findings, and these are not official, because the audit is not complete, they're saying that we're gonna be able to save about $602,000, which is great. For the first time in 2 years, we're gonna be able to put money back into the fund balance, and it was because of all the little things that we did throughout last year.
So we're talking about staffing and like policy. Is there a policy? I know we haven't received any big grants lately, but like I think a lot of it too have to do with the hiring of grants, and when that soft money is gone, will we still keep the people employed? Like, is that part of our policy too? Is that something we have to revisit?
That's something that we would have to revisit. Remember that F.I.R.S.T is going to do a complete study of all our local policies, but that's one of the things that we have on our front burner, not our back burner, to see if there's a policy that we can implement that states that anybody who is hired with soft money or grant money actually needs to sign some type of acknowledgement form saying, I, Ismael Garcia, understand that I'm being paid out of 21st century funds, and when the money runs out, I'm no longer have a job. Because that is very important. Ms. Landry always says that there is no such thing as free money. There's always some strings attached to it, and that is some of the things. You bring in money, which is good. You hire people, which are great services, but then when those grants end, you need to be able to either downsize or do something with the personnel. But that's a good suggestion, and we are looking into it. Now, just because you brought up grants, and I'm going to kind of step a little bit up. In the past couple of weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, we have actually received 2 grants. They do not involve any hiring of staff, but we've received 2 grants. One for some technology, totaling about $100,000, and then Friday we were notified that we received the kitchen equipment grant, which was like $70,000. So good for Riondo, good for our community. Moving on to the next one. So that's where we lost all the points. That's where our intentions are to pick up the points. Going to number 19, though I haven't finished number 19. Yeah, number 19 was the aggregate total cash and investments in the general fund more than zero. In other words, the little money that we had to invest, did we invest it and did we get any interest on it? And the answer is yes, although it's paying about 0.4, which is not even half a point. We still are required to invest the money and get whatever investment money or interest money that we can. And then that's the same one for 20, where investment earnings in all funds meet or exceed the 3-month treasury bill rate, and the answer is yes for that. Going on to the next part is just things that are requirement. That's my superintendent contract. By law, we're supposed to display it, share it with the public. I take it a step further. If you go to our website, and I think under board, if I'm not mistaken, you go under board, and then it says superintendent contract.